Okay. Welcome to the Prince George's County Historical Society's last history chat for the year about the Capitol Center, a retrospective, a book celebrating the history of the Capitol Center with co-author Kevin Leonard. I'm Donna Schneider, president of the Historical Society. If you have not already done so, please mute your microphones. We are recording the chat, and it will be posted on our YouTube channel, which can be found on our website, www.pghistory.org. We would like to thank our members and our sponsors for attending this evening. Without their assistance, we would not be able to offer things like these history chats at no cost. If you are not already a member, please consider becoming one or making a donation to the Society. Both of those options can be done via our website, www.pghistory.org. Now a bit about our guest tonight. Kevin Leonard is a founding member. I cannot talk. I'm sorry. Let me try this again. Kevin Leonard is a founding member of the Laurel History Boys and a two-time winner of the Maryland-Delaware District of Columbia Press Association Journalism Award. Kevin currently writes for the quarterly newspaper Voices of Laurel, which is produced by the Laurel History Boys. His articles have also appeared in other community newspapers in the Baltimore area, as well as the Los Angeles Times, New York Daily News, Chicago Tribune, and the Baltimore Sun. The Laurel History Boys have been honored with 2 Maryland Governor's citations, the Maryland Historical Trust's Maryland Preservation Award for Excellence in Community Engagement, and the Prince George's County Historical Society's St. George's Day Award. Actually, you've gotten several of them for a couple of your books.
Right.
Their latest book is Capitol Center, a Retrospective, which celebrates the entire history of the iconic arena. In addition to his workload with the Laurel History Boys, Kevin provides historical research services to book authors, documentary filmmakers, and television productions. He has appeared in 2 television series after providing research for the shows, and he can count a Pulitzer Prize winner and an Academy Award winner among his clients. So, welcome, Kevin, and let's get started. Who are the Laurel History Boys and what do they do?
Well, we're a nonprofit. That's the main thing. We've been around for about 7 years now, I think. I'd have to go back and actually look. My partners, the original founders, my partners are Richard Friend and Pete Lunas. And we just I was writing for the Laurel Leader, which doesn't exist anymore. And he started this blog about local history called Lost Laurel. And we met each other. And Pete, by the way, is a collector. So he's got this humongous collection of stuff just from the Laurel area. Anyway, we hit it off, and we started meeting every week, and then eventually we said, we really ought to collaborate on some stuff, and we came up with some ideas. We have a very active Facebook page. We've got, I think, 5,000 followers, I think it is. We do community presentations. As you mentioned, we produce a quarterly newspaper. The Laurel Leader went out of business along with all the other Baltimore Sun community papers. So we tried to fill that void. This is our 4th year now of producing that. It's an all volunteer effort. We have had over 80 different contributors to the paper in our 4 years. So
that's great.
That hasn't been a problem. We're wondering where we're going to get people to write for it, and that's been a really blessing for us. But the only thing, and everything we do is free except the books. That funds all these other projects. And Capitol Center is our 4th book, and we've got a few more on the horizon. But that's what we do. So we've made a pretty good name for ourselves around the greater Laurel area.
Yeah. And your Voices of Laurel is an amazing newspaper. I mean, all the content you have in it, and it's like I enjoy flipping through it whenever a new issue comes out.
Well, the main focus is obviously, like everything else we do, the main focus is history. We have started to incorporate some local news, but on a quarterly basis, that's kind of hard to do. But there is now another newspaper that goes monthly, so we're very content to let them do that.
Right.
But that really is the basis for what we're doing with the paper anyway.
Okay. So I know most of what we will be talking about is the Capital Center book, but I know you have other projects. You've already mentioned
Mhm.
the Voices of Laurel, and two other books.
Right.
So what are those two books going to be about?
Well, the next book that's going to be out is a history of the Laurel Police Department. It was written by a guy that I actually graduated from Laurel High School with, and he had a career as a cop in Laurel, and he's been retired since I think 2000 or 2001. And he wrote this book, self-published it, and then we came across it, and so we worked with him to update it and improve it because Rich, my partner Rich, is a designer. He designs the books, he designs the newspapers, and he's fantastic at what he does. So it's going to be a real improvement. That's actually done. We're looking to get it printed soon, so that'll be available sometime in the next 6 months. But the bigger project right now is that similar to the Capital Center book, we're doing a book about Meriwether Post Pavilion's first 50 years. And we're knee deep in the research and interviews for that.
Oh, yeah, another book I'll enjoy looking through. Been to several concerts there over my lifetime. Okay. So since it's the Laurel History Boys and you focus on Laurel, how did you decide to do a book about the Capitol Center since it's not in Laurel?
Right, right. Well, first of all, everybody, and I can include you, I'm sure, in this, everybody that grew up around here spent a lot of time at the Capitol Center
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of time at Meriwether Post Pavilion, too. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a real iconic venue for those of us that grew up around here. Jeff Krulik, who is on our board of directors, and he collaborates with us on a lot of things. He brought the project to us because he's friendly with Jerry Sachs, who was the president of the Capitol Center. And Jerry was really looking around. He wanted to somehow commemorate the Capitol Center. It wasn't necessarily a book he was thinking about, but he wanted to do something. And Jeff put us together with Jerry, and we said, well, we can certainly do a book. And he was ecstatic with the whole idea, and it just took off from there. But we were really happy to get involved because, like I said, we all three of us have a lot of memories of Capitol Center, so it was kind of a cool thing for us to do too, just like Meriwether is becoming too.
Yeah. Was Jerry Sachs president the entire time, or was he just?
He was president for the first about maybe almost 20 years, and then
Okay.
and then he retired.
Yeah. Um, so let's see. So you mentioned Jeff was one of the co-authors and Richard was one of the other ones.
Right, right.
Can you tell a little bit more about each of those gentlemen?
Well, as I said, Rich is a book designer. He is his full-time job is the art director for the Pew Charitable Trust. So everything they produce goes through Rich. Jeff is a filmmaker. Some would say a gonzo filmmaker. He uh, he produces some just under the radar self whatever the equivalent to self published is. And he did Led Zeppelin played here about did Led Zeppelin actually play in front of 50 teenagers at Wheaton Rec Center in 1969? He does all these strange but they're very entertaining films. One of his films last year was cited by the Washington Post as one of the top 50 films of the year.
Oh, it
Um,
was? Okay.
yeah, it was a documentary about a band called Fugazi. So
Okay. Never
again,
heard of him.
you have to be tuned in to Jeff's world to even know about a lot of this stuff. But anyway, so it was a real natural team, for us to produce this book.
I was going to say with Jeff, I don't think I'm really in his genre of music. But I recognize some of the names, but I got introduced to him from his video about Bel Air, Bowie at Bel Air.
Oh, right, right.
That's how
That
I
was on
got
M
to, yeah,
that was on MPT. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So I didn't realize what he was all into until after I met him at one of his showings of Bowie at Bel Air or Bel Air at Bowie. I forget which way it goes, but one of the ways. So you said that the funds from the books help fund your other projects. How do you
Right.
get the funds for your books? So, how do you fundraise to be able to produce the books?
We don't really fundraise. We're not really good at that, at asking for money. Some organizations, that's all they do, but that's just not us. All of our books, we self-publish them, and you can only get them through our website. and it's been great so far. They sell briskly, and having so many followers on Facebook certainly helps to get the word out. And so we haven't had any problems as far as that goes.
Well, that's good. Well, because I knew for the Capital Center book, you had various options of, if you want to purchase one book or two books, if you want to purchase this or purchase that as part of the package or whatever. So, I mean, I will say some of the little extra goodies that you offered for the purchasing the books, those were nice. I didn't mind getting those. Um,
Well, that's all part of the Kickstarter. That's how we actually fund the printing, and
yeah.
it's worked great. So we do a Kickstarter campaign, and if you're familiar with that, how that works, you offer inducements, trinkets. In this case, we had some historic ticket stubs,
The
and we had
stickers and
stickers and
tote bags. Yeah.
right, all kinds of stuff like that. And it works, and it pays for the printing. So
That's great. And what was really nice is that you ended up getting enough orders that you could upgrade it from a paperback copy to a
oh yeah,
hardcover.
yeah, that was important to us. It makes a big difference. So.
Yeah. Yeah, it's proudly on my shelf. Um, let's see. So, you said what Pete Loomis was a collector. Did he
Yep.
help start, by contributing items from his collection, or how
Oh,
did you
sure.
get what you put into the book?
Um, yeah, yeah. Obviously, we use some pieces. Although he didn't have a whole lot about Capital Center because he pretty much concentrates on Laurel. Um, Again, we did a lot of research. In the University of Maryland has a collection down there, and they allowed us to go through all their stuff. Jerry Sachs put us in touch with a lot of people. I interviewed about 3 dozen former employees, everything from Jerry, who was the president, down to the guy that sold the popcorn. And I gained a really good overall feeling for how the building worked. And a lot of those folks had stuff that they saved. But this one woman, Jean Davis is her name, she had this huge, oversized scrapbook, and she let us scan everything in it. It was great. People just came out of the woodwork. We put out a call. We call a call for artifacts. We did that on Facebook, and people just, you know, came up with all kinds of stuff. We had more ticket stubs than we could handle. We had thousands of ticket stubs, so we kind of had to go through those to figure out which are the best ones. And but that's okay. That's a good problem to have.
Yeah, of course, you put that call out after I had decided to get rid of all of, I created a spreadsheet of all of the events that I have gone to since I was little, since I was a teenager, and I wrote everything down in a spreadsheet because I just couldn't keep all the paper and the programs and all that anymore. And it's just like, I swear it was probably like a month or two after I finished that and had recycled everything that I saw the email or the
Yeah.
Facebook posting saying you're looking for Capital Center stuff. It's like, really? What poor timing. Because
Well,
I had a lot. I attended a lot of stuff at the Capital Center, especially
you would
since
be
I lived next
surprised.
door. Yeah.
You would be surprised how many people catalog that stuff just like you did.
Yeah.
I was amazed. I was amazed. There's so many people that they hang on to that kind of thing, and they actually, like I said, catalog it. So
Yeah. Well, I'm up to, I started this when I was like about 12, 13 years old of events I went to, and I'm up to almost 1,000 different events.
yeah, yeah.
So, yeah.
And everybody, without exception, everybody was only too happy to say, we said, can we use it in the book? Absolutely. They wanted to see it in the book. So,
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite parts of the book really is your list of all the events at the back. It's
yeah,
just like I probably spent several hours just working my way through the list, and it's like, oh my God, I forgot about that. And it's just like,
right.
all the memories started clicking in my head of attending or listening to the band or whatever that I went to go watch. Let's see.
We got really lucky with that because we had intended to do that, knowing full well that that would have been a humongous research job to try to piece that together. But one of the people I interviewed, a guy named Bill Harpole, who was one of the vice presidents at Capital Center, he was one of the many people who moved over to MCI Center when that opened, and I don't remember now. Whenever he retired after a while at MCI Center, and as a gift, somebody had put together that list for him, and so
Oh
he loaned
my.
it to us. So, you know, it had some holes in it that through research we were able to fill, but it was 99%.
Oh
You
my.
Now for Meriwether, we're starting from scratch, and it's because that was a summer only venue. There's not as many dates every year, but it's huge to try to put all that together. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's really cool to have that in the bag. That's the thing everybody really likes because they always say, "Oh, I went to this and that concert, and I want to go." And they're wrong. And it's like, no, I thought that was 1986. It was 1988. Whatever. So
Well, that's like I couldn't remember because I graduated high school from the Capitol Center. It's like I knew I graduated in May, but I couldn't remember the date. So, I flipped through there and found that my graduation date. Um, let's see. So, how did you guys decide what you were all going to include? How did you get the final, um, you
right.
know, what was it and how did you guys decide how to organize the book and put all that information together?
That's a really good question. Um, the book we did before this was a book about the history of Laurel because in 2020 it was their 150th anniversary, and that right away um, it made sense to me to do that chronologically and do it decade by decade. That just kind of made sense because otherwise, we kind of produce scrapbooks. We don't do a just a long historical narrative because that's boring. We want a lot of images, and so when we sat down and started plotting this book, um, the whole chronology didn't really work because instead, what really hit us, all three of us remembered those four icons in the parking lot. Because anyway, it went to Capitol Center. If you didn't remember the icon, you would have spent hours trying to find your car.
Yep.
So it was
Liberty
Liberty
Bell, that was
Bell,
mine.
Liberty Bell, Stars and Stripes, Capitol Dome, and what was the other one? I should know this. Anyway, so we said, okay, we'll have four sections. And then it just all fell into place. So the first section is about the venue, the building itself. The second one is concerts. The third one is sports. And then the fourth is everything else. And it just fell into place that way. Made sense. So,
Yeah. Um, so I mean, I'm sure you got thousands of pieces of things to
oh, yeah,
to
yeah,
to
yeah.
to potentially put in the book. How did you go through the process of figuring out what should be in the book?
Well, it was kind of like doing a jigsaw puzzle without the box. So you didn't see what the final product's supposed to look like. So I did all the writing. So I wrote up all these stories and I interviewed people and I took quotes and stories from the interviews. Rich collated all these images and Jeff was helping with everything. And Rich gets most of the credit for actually deciding what went in there because if I gave him a story and we all agreed this was a good story, well, he had to find an image to go along with it, you know. Um, so that kind of fell on him to put it all together like that. So, but it was based on what stories did we have? Some quotes were just fantastic. The best one of the best quotes was a guy named Ralph Byer, who was the head of the ticketing operation, and he said, "Tickets are more valuable than money." And I love that quote because it's so true,
It is
you
true.
know. And so little things like that, so we had to come up with an image for that. So um, it was a real juggling act, but it came together pretty well.
Yeah. So the Poland family that,
Yep, yep,
was involved with the Capitol Center and the basketball team, hockey,
yep.
but they hockey too? I
Yes,
can't remember.
absolutely,
Yeah, the hockey too.
absolutely.
Okay, couldn't remember. So I mean, they contributed to the book. How did
Well,
you?
they supported the book. They didn't
Okay,
contribute.
okay, they
Um,
supported it. Okay.
yeah, but that was essential. So Abe Poland and his wife Irene, they both passed away. But their sons Jim and Robert, they both wrote forwards for the book. They were absolutely behind it 100%. And Jim helped me. get a hold of former employees. He was a big help in that way too. So yeah, um, they were uh, instrumental in making this happen because without their support, it probably couldn't have happened. If nothing else, we would have been maybe in copyright infringement. We didn't want to go anywhere near that. So
I don't blame
yeah,
you.
yeah,
Yes, yeah, yeah. Well, that's great that they were supportive of it and
yeah.
involved by contributing to the book.
But
Um,
let me say this too, though, about since you asked me about the polling. So it's very interesting now. In my career, I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people about all different things, and I have never interviewed so many people about a certain individual. And I'm talking about Abe Pollin now. No one had anything bad to say about this guy. He was universally loved. I couldn't believe it. I kept thinking, well, come on, I'm not looking for dirt, but is the guy really a saint? And apparently he was. Everybody loved this guy, and he
that's
did an awful lot of stuff that nobody knows about. That I was told a lot of stories about his charity work and everything, and he really was a terrific guy, unbelievable.
I've heard the same thing, and I've heard about his charity work too. He did seem like an amazing individual.
Yeah.
Um, well, the whole, he and his wife. I mean, she was as
Yes.
involved as he was, it seems like.
Yes, they were. She's the one that came up with the name Capital Center.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's appropriate. Um, so you said I'm sorry, I forget which son you said helped put you in contact with other
That was Jim. Jim.
Jim, with some
Yeah.
of the employees. How else did you get in contact with employees? Just by
Uh,
Facebook or?
well, no, no, not for that. For that, it was again. So Jim, helped put me in touch with a lot of them. But once I started talking to some of them, because they all stay in touch, and so the word went out among this, network of ex-employees, and I got a few emails and phone calls from people wanting to know, could they talk to me? Because they all wanted to participate in this. They all liked the idea of the Capitol Center being immortalized somehow. They every one of them also said this was the best job they ever had. And one of the things that I found especially fascinating was that when they opened the Capitol Center, nobody from Abe Pollin on down, not a single person on staff had ever had anything to do with an arena. They had no idea, but they they
They
did just
made it work.
they did an absolutely fabulous job, and they all learned on the fly. They were young, they were gung ho, and they were dedicated. And then they worked for a guy that they adored. So I guess it all helped.
Okay. So I'm sure there were stories that didn't make the book. Any you can share?
Well, there's some I can't, but yeah, sure, there are some. Um, Another guy who was universally loved was Wes Unseld. Not everybody loved Wes Unseld. And it's interesting that Wes Unseld never worked for anyone in his entire career except Abe Pollin. He was drafted him out of Louisville. So he played for the Bullets. He moved into the front office. He never worked anywhere else. But a good story that's not in the book about Wes is that Wes Unseld was truly a son to Abe Pollin. And uh, he didn't have an agent because he didn't need one. And so one year, Abe called him into his office and said, "Okay, it's time to renegotiate your contract." So he gave him a piece of paper and a pencil, and he said, "Here, I've got one too. Now let's both write down what we think you should get on your next contract." So they both wrote down a number, and Abe said, "Okay, well, who goes first?" And Wes Unseld said, "Well, I think you should." So Abe Pollin showed Wes his paper, and so Wes ate his. He just put it in his mouth and ate it. So
I guess he
um,
shortchanged himself.
I would say so. But there were some other interesting things that you don't think about. The changeover crew. What a fantastic job they do. So you could make it up, but you could go from basketball one day to hockey the next day to a
Mhm.
circus for the next couple of days, and then a concert. On and on and on. And again, when they started, they had no idea how to do this, but they made it work.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. They told me that it became a process that, they it wasn't a big deal for them after a while, except dirt. Any show that required dirt was a pain, because so you have the concrete floor, which has the cool, whatever you call those things that freeze the ice, and then
Yeah.
they put the water on top of that and freeze it. But anyway, so for dirt, they had to go all the way down to the concrete, melt everything, truck in some humongous load of dirt, bring in loaders, and all this, and they couldn't sell the first 10 rows of seats, especially with monster trucks, because the dirt was flying too much.
Right.
But the hard part was after the show, because there can't be a speck of dirt that would make its way into the ice. That would be a problem. So they would bring the front loaders back in and the dump trucks, and then they would get these big, huge industrial scrubbers. They would have to scrub the concrete. They had these leaf blowers. It was sounded like such a process. But so they hated anything that needed dirt. Um, but another thing that I'd never heard about was, so when the American Disabilities Act was passed, what that meant was they had to have someone signing on stage with these rock and roll bands. And I said to him, well, that had to take a very special skill, to be able to interpret the lyrics, because sometimes you don't know what they're saying, for one thing. But they said, no, actually, they said that wasn't the problem. The problem was the bands didn't like it because there was another spotlight over there on this signer, and they felt it was taking attention away from them. And I was like, oh, I never thought of that. But um, but there were a couple of stories. The first time the Rolling Stones played there, they insisted on cash only, and they were telling me that they had like some 20 or 30 hefty trash bags of cash to take to the bank afterwards, because no credit card sales. They Rolling Stones insisted no credit cards. Um, that was one of them. Van Halen, this is kind of an urban legend, but it is true because it was a Capitol Center. First time Van Halen played there, in their rider, which is the contract
Hmm.
that stipulates what they want and all that, they had it in there that they wanted a big bowl of M&Ms, but no brown ones. So they had to fill this bowl with M&Ms, and a couple of staffers had to go through and pick out all the brown ones. And then when they came back the next year or whatever, it wasn't in the rider. And somebody asked them about it. They said, "How come you didn't have that thing about the M&Ms?" And they said, "We used to do stuff like that to see if anybody's paying attention." um,
Well, that Eminem story seems to go around with a lot of other artists as well.
I know, but
I've
it,
heard
it
everybody
was
knows.
Van Halen, and it was at the Capitol Center. So I have a few people that were there. So at least they claimed they were there.
Interesting.
Some of the others, Elton John, back in his heyday, when he had the whole regalia and his costumes and everything. I was talking to a guy who, he said his job that night, he and another guy were to escort him up onto the stage because it was pitch black, and then the lights were going to come out and this real dramatic entrance. But he said they had to go through this swinging door and then up this short flight of stairs to get onto the stage. And he said he had one arm of Elton's and this other guy had another one. And he said they went through the door and he let go, thinking the other guy is going to grab the door, but it swung and hit Elton right in the face, and
Oh no.
his costume is all askew, and he thought, "Uh oh, I'm fired. That's it." But he said Elton was really cool. He goes, "Oh, don't worry about it," and he put himself back together again, and the show went on. It was no big deal.
Oh,
So,
jeez. Well,
uh,
I was gonna say after your dirt story, I bet having the circus come in it was a lot of fun too.
anything with dirt, they hated. They just hated it. It was just such a hassle, and they had to clean all the seats. It was in the air. It was hard to get rid of. Um, when in the book I did write about all the firsts, the innovations that were at Capitol Center, and one of which was the telescreen. They were the first arena to have a video system like that. And I heard a lot of stories about how the bands they didn't know what to make of this. They'd never seen anything like that. And apparently, there's a YouTube video of Springsteen, his first time, and the whole time he's playing, he's looking up at himself on the screen because they'd never seen anything like this. But they also had issues because a lot of the band's managers didn't want him to turn it on because they thought there were going to be pirated bootlegs everywhere. But apparently, they smoothed that over because they did use it.
And they do it all the time now.
The guy who was in charge of the telescreen, that whole system, he told me he was also one that went over to MCI Center, and he told me nobody told him when the building was going to be imploded. He said all the videos were in the basement. Everything went with the implosion. They weren't able to save anything because he says nobody told them when they were going to do it. So it's
Oh,
all lost. All that video is lost,
oh my
except for
gosh.
there are a lot of bootlegs out there, but the official
The
library.
official stuff is gone.
Yeah,
Oh, that's sad.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
jeez. Any
There
other
were
firsts that they had there?
what's that?
Were there any other firsts?
Oh yeah. Well, the telescreen was the big one. Let's see. They were the first arena to have in-house computerized ticketing. They were the first arena to have what they called the quiet room, which was a lounge for parents to, if they want to wait for their children, they would go up into this lounge and spend some time up there. Apparently, one time the Beastie Boys went up to the quiet room and were hanging out with some of the parents, and the parents didn't know what to make of this because they apparently behaved themselves very well, and the parents were like, oh, these guys aren't so bad, you know.
Wait till you see
uh,
him on stage. You'll think again.
yeah, well, maybe so. The Capitol Center was the first arena to sell the name when it became US Air Arena. That had never been done before.
I didn't
Um,
realize that. Okay,
yeah. Um, there were others. It's all that is in the book. I just can't remember them all.
that's fine.
There were lots of stories about the Grateful Dead. When the Grateful Dead came to town, it was nuts. It was crazy. Um, like a handful of them somehow shimmied up onto the roof. They didn't have tickets, so they shimmied up onto the roof somehow and found the heating ducts and were crawling through the heating ducts, and they dropped down out of the ceiling into one of the sky suites. That
Oops.
was,
Oops.
I can only imagine what they looked like when they came out of the ceiling. But stuff like that. Uh, my favorite story is in the book, and I'll tell you because it
Okay.
just cracks me up. The band, The Police,
Hmm.
was playing, and uh, the guy that I talked to, he was one of the concessionaires. He and his partner had the booth that sold T-shirts and hats and stuff like that. And he said it was very common, a few hours before the show, that the performers would walk around the concourse because there was really nothing else to do. And he said, here came Sting and Stuart Copeland, but they didn't recognize him. And they walked over and they saw the T-shirts and they were looking at going through the T-shirts. And this guy's partner said to Sting, he goes, hey, you can't do that. We're not open yet. And Sting said, it's okay. We're the police. And he thought he meant the Prince George's County Police.
Oops.
and he said to Sting, well, then you should know better. Get away from our stuff. And Sting said, no, really, we're the police. And he said, I heard you the first time. Get away from our stuff. Well, Sting was highly insulted, and he went backstage and told his manager they're not going on until that guy comes and apologizes. So they went and got him and brought him down. He apologized. The show went on.
Yeah. Well, when you were talking about the crossover team, the ones that also always fascinated me were the Zamboni drivers, as they were
Right.
doing the ice, and it's just like how they got it. Lots of practice, I know, but got it so even around the rink and all that other stuff. It's like I didn't want to go to the bathroom or get something during the breaks. I wanted to watch the Zamboni drivers do their job.
Well, this is interesting. I learned. Guess how thick the ice was when the hockey rink was set up?
I have no clue.
5 inches.
5 inches. I was thinking six, so I was close.
Yeah. I always thought it would be more than that, but they said, no, that's all you need. But they had to do the logos. Every time they melted the ice, they had to paint the logos and all that. And So it wasn't an easy or quick, fix, but they got it done. They got it done.
Yeah, they always seemed, I forget what it was, that I was there in the afternoon for one event and came back in the evening for another, and it was like two totally different things. It might
Right.
have been like a hockey game
Right.
and maybe it was a graduation for all I know. I really don't
Right.
remember. But it was like, yeah, it's amazing how they can take apart and put together so quickly. But that's a lot of
Well,
practice.
the design of the building actually contributed to it becoming obsolete
Mm,
because, with that distinctive roof, what they
yeah,
used to call it the saddle.
right.
Um, so that roof was not designed to have things hanging off it.
Mm,
And as time went on, the concerts got bigger and bigger and bigger. And so they have to use this temporary rigging to hang all the speakers and the lights. And they said that Michael Jackson and Prince, they came with so much stuff that they couldn't even put it all up. And so that really had a lot to do with the building being obsolete. So they didn't take that into account when they designed the building. They also didn't take into account sky suites. That was an afterthought. That's why they were so high up, and they were the
mm.
worst seats in the house. You were so far away, but they made it work. They made it
I
work.
mean, when it was built, the concerts weren't like what Prince and Michael Jackson
No,
ended up
exactly,
with, when they were
exactly,
coming through. So yeah, it was
exactly. So,
more like Elvis and a few of the other ones that had probably very little equipment.
well, when its first week of operation in December of '73, they opened with a Bullets game, the Bullets against the Seattle Supersonics. Then they had the Allman Brothers Band, then the Who, then Johnny Cash and Disney on Ice. That was their first week.
Oh
That's
boy,
not bad.
no, that's not bad at all.
That's not bad.
No.
Their first year they had more concerts than any other arena in the country. So,
Well, that's
you know,
something to say. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. They really made it work. It was
Um,
something.
I know the Capitol Center was called the Saddle, but it's just like it always made me think of a skateboard rink. I don't know why, but that's always what I thought of it rather than the Saddle. But yeah, it was very iconic, and it's
Yeah.
like I was really sad when it imploded. I don't cry at a lot of things, but the day that I heard that it was coming down, it's just like, yeah, no, I couldn't believe it. It's like I'm losing a big chunk of my life.
And now that you know all the videos down there, it's even worse. So
It's a lot worse now. I figured that was stuff that had gotten to the University of Maryland or something like
no,
that.
no, no. It got destroyed when they imploded the building.
That really is heartbreaking. um, any other stories you want to share?
Let's see. I did make a list here. Oh well, Barbara Streisand. So they had a standing rule that I don't know how many dressing rooms they had, but they had quite a few on one side of the arena. And the other side were the locker rooms for the Caps and the Bullets. And there was a standing rule that nobody got to use the locker rooms. But Barbara Streisand showed up with a semi truck of Chippendale furniture and a floor plan of how it was to be arranged. And the only place it would fit was in one of the locker rooms. So she was the exception. They put her, I don't remember which one it was, but they put her in one of the locker rooms so that she could have all her all her
Furniture.
furniture. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know. Um, well, I started to talk about the Grateful Dead. So they came through the roof that one time. They After a while Poland built this office building in the back of the parking lot, and a lot of
Hmm.
the executive offices were over there. And they had room window air conditioners. And the first time the Grateful Dead came, Abe Poland looked out his window and couldn't believe it that some naked deadheads were trying to take a shower on the drips coming off his window air conditioner.
Okay.
Um, oh, it was nuts. It was nuts when came to town. Abe Poland was a little bit older. He was not a rock and roll generation guy. He was a Frank Sinatra guy,
Hmm.
and rock and roll was a mystery to him, although he knew that it made a lot of money. As I said, so the second night was the Allman Brothers Band. And one of the guys I talked to said he was a VP. He was walking around the concourse that night with Abe Poland. And he said, Abe Poland said, "What's that smell?" And he said, "Well, Abe, if you're going to have concerts, you better get used to that smell." So, um, but it was so foreign to him. So anyway, I also found out, and this is in the book, but the Capitol Center was built in a swamp, and so were pumps underneath the building, 24 hours a day, pumping water out of the ground.
Where did the water go?
I'm not sure where they pumped it to, but they got it out from underneath the Capitol Center because it was a swamp.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm sure you could regale us with more stories, but probably people would like to know, where can they get your book?
Oh, well, the book, let me show you. Where is it? Here, let's see. As I said, the book is only available on our website. So it's laurelhistory.com and just click on shop. And we do everything. We package them up. We Anybody who lives in the Laurel area, we just drop it off, to save the postage. But we do our best to get it out right away. So we're not Amazon, but we do our best. So, but that's the only place you can get it. Laurelhistory.com.
Great. Um, Anything else you would like to share before I see if anybody has questions?
Uh, no, no, I think we've covered an awful lot. I don't want to give away too much out of the book, so
True. I mean, it's a fascinating, you can spend several hours just going through it and looking at the pictures and reading the stories and bringing, hopefully for a lot of you, it'll bring back memories like it did for me. So, does anybody have any questions? I mean, I don't see any in the chat, but if you want to unmute your microphone and ask any questions, you can do so. I'm not seeing or hearing any. Um, well, I want to just say thank you, Kevin. You and your co-authors definitely helped me relive my childhood and even young adulthood until the Capitol Center was no more. I'm sorry, but it was never US Air Arena for me. It was always the Capitol Center, even though I went to quite a few once it changed names.
right.
And the stadium or the arena downtown just isn't the same. It just isn't the same. But I do appreciate you taking your time and joining us this evening and sharing your stories. And we look forward to your next book. Oh, you have
Yes,
the second one's Meriwether Post. When will
right.
that one? When do you think that one will be ready?
Oh, it'll be at least a year.
Here.
At least a year. Yeah, oh yeah. That's a lot of work. So,
Okay.
well, I'll come back when that's ready.
Sounds good. We'll pencil you into the calendar for then.
Okay.
Um, Again, thank you for joining us this evening. And just to let everybody know that this is our last history chat for 2024. We will be back in January of 2025 with our fifth season. I don't even remember. Fifth season, I think, of the history chats. So again, thank you everybody for joining us tonight.
Thank you.